horror movie lovers of the interwebs, I'm Alexa, resident ooky spooky girly, and today we're discussing something I tend to be passionate about, disturbing media. While my expertise usually tends to lie more in the genre of media made for younger generations, with the help of some of my friends, I think I'm prepared for today. So question for y'all, what's one horror movie you'll never watch? Let me know in the comments and stay tuned until the end of the day for my opinion. But first, welcome to the top 5 disturbing horror movies audiences refuse to watch. Number 5, The House That Jack Built. Director Lars von Trier has become known for his hard-to-sit-through movies throughout his career, so it makes sense that The House That Jack Built would be a movie made for only those with very strong constitutions. I am not one of those. The movie follows the main antagonist, Jack, a psychotic serial killer, who must account for his crimes in hell. But before he does so, he is led around to the 9 circles of hell by the Roman poet, Virgil, who details his crimes through a series of flashbacks. The first killing starts off with Jack trying to help out a lady who had some car trouble on the road. However, she is ungrateful for his help when it does not work out, so, he just kills her, freezes her body in his warehouse. As you do. His second killing involves forming a friendship with a widow, Claire, and then proceeding to impale her. He is almost caught by a nearby police officer, but manages to quickly hide her body in the bushes before he can see. This is when he begins to form his serial killer alias, Mr. Sophistication, and starts sending in anonymous letters and photos of his victims to the police. Jack is shown having difficulty forming relationships with women. We kinda saw that, but in case you didn't see the obvious. He kills his first girlfriend's offspring on a hunting trip and forces her to have a picnic with their corpses before he kills her as well. The killing of his second girlfriend, Jacqueline, is more gruesome as he chops off her breasts and keeps them as souvenirs. Now Jack is eventually caught when carrying out his 5th killing, which requires him to purchase a weapon. He gets tipped off to the police, who chase him to said warehouse, but before they can catch him, Jack encounters Virgil, known as Verge, who takes him back to hell. Now at this point, Verge has finished recounting his crimes and they have reached the 9th center of hell. The center circle. Jack tries to escape by running to a staircase, but instead he falls into the abyss, finally ensuing justice for his actions. The movie is said to have led to over 100 walkouts at the Cannes Film Festival, with many uttering their disgust towards the film. From there, news spread quickly, putting this movie's names on the lips of many horror enthusiasts. Most have probably only seen the theatrical cut, but IFC Films actually got in trouble for its release of the unrated cut, not long before the film's wide release, further adding to the notoriety of the film. The film polarized critics and was described as 2018's most extreme and controversial horror movie. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 60% based on 138 reviews and an average rating of 6.2 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "The House That Jack Built presents writer-director Lars von Trier at his most proudly uncompromising, hard to ignore, and for many viewers, just as difficult to digest." In October 2018, it was reported that the director's cut, which is the uncensored version that played at said film festival, would play in US theaters for one night in November, followed by an edited R-rated version release in selected theaters and on digital platforms in December. Now, immediately following the unrated director's cut screenings, the Motion Picture Association of America, otherwise known as MPAA, issued a statement condemning the screening for not adhering to the board's guidelines. In the statement, it was noted that the screening of an unrated version of the film in such close proximity to the release of the rated version without obtaining a waiver is in violation of the rating system's rules. Uh-oh. Failure to comply with the rules can create confusion among parents and undermine the rating system, and may result in the imposition of sanctions against the film submitter. Thankfully though, by a couple of days later, I think it was the beginning of December, the MPAA had resolved the dispute with IFC Films by pushing the digital release of the director's cut back to 2019, as opposed to coinciding with the theatrical release of the R-rated cut. But the next day, the day after that all got figured out, the director's cut was released to purchase on YouTube for several hours. That's it, just 7 hours. How does the saying go again? Controversy creates cash? Number 4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film from 1974 arguably puts slasher films as a whole on the map. In this film, we see Sally and her friends traveling through Texas when they find themselves short on gas. And when the local pumps are empty, they soon find themselves at the residence of the Sawyer family, a clan of people eaters who kill tourists for consumption. Doing the dirty work is Leatherface, the family's chainsaw-wielding butcher who soon makes short work of Sally's friends. The brazen butchery of this film proved way too much for moviegoers across the world and was banned in many countries. As a matter of fact, the British Board of Film Classification had long refused a certification for the uncut theatrical version, and in 1984 they also refused to certify it for home video, amid a moral panic surrounding video nasties. After the retirement of BBFC director James Furman in 1999, the board passed the film uncut for theatrical and video distribution with an 18 certificate, but this was almost 25 years after the original release, which is almost as long as I've been alive. Due to the film's violent content, it struggled to find a distributor, but was eventually acquired by the Bryanston Distributing Company. It originally had an X rating from the MPAA, and it's not hard to see why. The director did actually limit the quantity of on-screen gore in hopes of securing a PG rating, but the MPAA was like, no, you're getting an R, be happy with it. I believe it was banned in about several countries, and numerous theaters stopped showing the film in response to complaints about its violence. The death scenes were way ahead of their time. One particular kill lives in infamy and sees good old Leatherface impaling one of the characters onto a meat hook to later be slaughtered, but not before she's forced to watch the infamous killer and one of her friends with his trusty chainsaw. It has since gained a reputation as one of the best and most influential horror films. It is credited, once again, with originating several elements common in the slasher genre, including the use of power tools as weapons, the characterization of the killer as a large, hulking masked figure, and the killing of victims. Empire described it as the most purely horrifying horror movie ever made, and called it never less than totally committed to scaring you witless. Fun fact? I think it's fun. The character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of real-life mass killer Ed Gein. So, you give that what you will. Number 3, all things Terrifier. Technically, I'm cheating a little bit here with a multiple for one special, but I'm sure you'll understand why in a moment, I promise. I will fully admit I don't really love slasher and gory films outside of Repo the Genetic Opera, but what I've seen of Art the Clown from a friend of mine, who cosplays him very well, I enjoy the character. Speaking of the chaotic clown man, for those who might not be aware, director Damien Leone first brought Art the Clown to life in 2008's The Ninth Circle. Surprisingly, Art the Clown's role in the short is relatively small, but he's easily the most memorable part. The film opens with a young woman named Casey waiting on a train when she sees Art sit across from her. Needless to say, she's quickly creeped out by Art the Clown, and after tricking her with a gift, he injects her with a syringe and kidnaps her. Art the Clown disappears from the Ninth Circle following this opening, with Casey waking up underground and being tormented by a demonic cult. The second half of the short is still atmospheric, though some of the masks used for the demon characters don't hold up nearly as well as, Art's black and white mime-like makeup. He eventually got the spotlight in 2011's Terrifier short, which followed a young woman who witnesses one of the villain's killings. After appearing in All Hallows Eve, director Damien Leone adapted Terrifier into a feature-length film in 2016, with the clown stalking 3 young women on Halloween. It's trashy in the best ways, featuring a jaw-dropping upside-down kill, and as most good flicks do, leaves the audience craving more. Enter Terrifier 2, last year's most shocking horror movie, responsible for fainting and vomiting across movie theaters worldwide. So after being resurrected by an unknown entity following the Miles County massacre, Art the Clown uses a hammer to brutally kill the coroner investigating his body. He goes to the laundromat to clean his red-soaked garments, where he encounters a little pale girl, a mysterious sinister entity in similar clown attire. A lone patron sees Art interacting with the girl, who's invisible to him, before being killed by Art. A year later, teenager Sienna Shaw is putting the finishing touches on her Halloween costume made by her father, who recently passed away of a brain tumor. Now Sienna's younger brother Jonathan wants to dress as Art for Halloween, and has become fixated with him since discovering sketches of him and his victims in their father's sketchbook. Now that night, Sienna has a nightmare where she encounters Art and awakens to a fire on her dresser, which destroys the wings that were needed for her costume, while the sword that was a gift to her from her father remains unscathed. On Halloween, Jonathan sees Art and the little pale girl at school playing with a dead opossum. At that same time, Sienna and her friend Allie go to the costume shop, where they encounter Art. Art, in classic fashion, kills the shop vendor and later breaks into Allie's home, where he brutally maims her. Allie's mother is also killed when she discovers her daughter's still breathing, flayed body. Jonathan shows Sienna and their mother Barbara his father's sketchbook of Art, filled with newspaper clippings of killings connected to him, revealing that the little pale girl bears a resemblance of his first victim named Emily Crane, the daughter of a circus performer whose body was discovered in a makeup trailer. Jonathan believes their father knew how to stop Art, but nobody else believes him. After Barbara tears up the sketchbook and hurts Jonathan, she finds her car vandalized, and while cleaning it, you guessed it, she's killed by Art. When Jonathan returns home, he finds his mother's corpse, and Art chases after him before drugging and kidnapping him, stealing Sienna's sword in the process. As Art's killing spree unfolds, the film becomes a gruesome ballet of brutality. The sword, a gift from Sienna's deceased father, becomes a focal point of both horror and hope, a macabre talisman that transcends the boundary between life and death. So we've got the whole film. We know how it is. This film got to the point where one of the producers had to take to Twitter to issue a warning about graphic violence and brutal depictions of horror. So watch at your own risk, and by the way, there's a 3rd installment coming next year. You'll never catch me watching all 3, but do with that as you will. Number 2, anything from Lucifer Valentine. Okie dokie folks, if you have emetophilia, skip ahead now, you're not gonna break my heart. We're good? Alright. So this director would be the man who created vomit gore as a genre of film, and just the thought of that has me trying my darndest not to retch. He's responsible for the aptly named Vomit Gore trilogy, 3 American-Canadian surreal psychological horror films which follow a non-linear narrative that centers around young runaway Angela Aberdeen, I love alliteration, a stripper that suffers from bulimia. The trilogy focuses primarily on situations involving vomiting, people eating, graphic violence, gore, torment, and more. In order, they're titled Slaughtered Vomit Dolls, Regurgitated Sacrifice, and Slow Torture Puke Chamber. Yeah, we're moving on before I also upchuck. You'll never catch me watching those, even if I love dolls. Number 1, The Human Centipede. Was there any other option to end today's list with? It's a 2009 Dutch independent body horror film written, directed, and co-produced by Tom Six. The film concerns a deranged German surgeon who kidnaps 3 tourists and conjoins them surgically, mouth to anus, forming the Human Centipede. According to the director, the concept arose from a joke he had made with friends about punishing a heinous criminal by stitching his mouth to the anus of a fat truck driver. Other sources of inspiration were Yahtzee medical experiments performed during World War II, such as those performed by Joseph Mengele, something we've talked about extensively on here. The director didn't mention the premise of the film for fear of putting off potential backers. I wonder why. Those who did finance the film didn't discover the full nature of it until completion. During promotion for The Human Centipede, press materials claimed that the film was 100% medically accurate, which I don't know how they can do that. During its festival run, the director remarked on how many audiences reacted strongly to the film, sometimes almost vomiting in the cinema aisles, and quite a few folks running out. Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a 49% approval rating based on 97 reviews, with an average rating of 5.15 out of 10. The general consensus states, grotesque, visceral, and hard to swallow. This surgical horror doesn't quite earn its stripes because the gross sets overwhelm and devalue everything else. I've never been able to bring myself to watch it, so let me know in the comments if you have. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I'm feeling pretty grossed out. Anybody else? If you were entertained by my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more disturbing content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.